All right, welcome back to the Silkin podcast and our webinar for today. As always, I have the immaculate, the incredible, the one and only Mr. Dave McKevitt alongside with me. So, welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Julia. You too,
Happy holidays.
everyone.
Good. Excellent. So, let's go ahead and get into it. So, as we know, the topic for today is, most practices don't struggle because they lack patience. They struggle because profitability, staff efficiency, and training never fully come together. So, we definitely have some big ideas here and big topics and going over how they basically commingle, how they work with one another for the end product and the end creation of profitability, less stress, and efficient practice that just runs smoothly and crisply as one has envisioned. So, why don't we go ahead and get started? And, as noted, even strong practices face some of the same challenges where, revenue is there, but margins feel tight, and how that may relate to staff efficiency and training. So I don't know if you wanted to go ahead and
Take it, Dave.
take it, Dave.
Yes. Well, if one of the things that you've got to have your basics in place. And we use that word perhaps a little glibly because we work with helping our clients get their basics in all the time. So what the heck are basics? Uh, First off, you have to have every staff member has to have a written hat or job description that clearly lays out the expectations, the duties that you expect them to perform. They have to have been trained in them. And you have to monitor them not by micromanaging them, but by monitoring the statistics of what they're supposed to produce, which leads into another point that needs to be clear with every staff member is what exactly are they supposed to be producing? What is the product that comes out of their post or position that contributes to the overall product of the practice? And a product can always be statusized. And that's what you monitor. You don't micromanage them by looking over their shoulder. So those are just a few of the most basic basics that need to be in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And defining products, I think, is always such a missed piece, an important piece in terms of when we're talking about staff efficiency, profitability, is understanding and really delineating and defining is what each person in each area is producing. And sometimes when we talk to our clients initially about producing, right, it's like, well, there's nothing tangible that they're creating, so I'm not sure what product they're producing. And I think part of that definition, we introduce an additional definition, one can say, to product, right? And it is something that is exchangeable. It is something that I can give to another in exchange for something. And when we're talking about within an organization, like an organizations exchange products with different areas in order to create this overall product that the client or the patient receives, right? And so this is one of I enjoy this aspect when working with clients is getting them to really look and go, okay, so Susie is a hygienist, or Susie is a dental assistant, or she's a vet tech. What is her product? And this really opens the eyes for the owner and the manager because they really have to take a look at, well, what are they doing all day? What are their job duties? What do I need them to actually create? And they begin to see kind of the clutter, like the noise, I call it, of, well, Susie is so busy, yet Susie isn't really getting anything done. And then it gets very streamlined. And Susie now then produces this product that she exchanges with the client or the patient and also within the practice. And then that, as you mentioned, right, that gets measured. And then it's so much easier to manage and not micromanage Susie on her job because it's very black and white. And that becomes the ease in managing staff when we're talking about what you put in the basics, right? That is an absolute basic that has to be in.
Yes, and when these basics aren't in, you run into this phenomenon of that we call developed traffic, which means people are doing things that they really shouldn't be doing, or because it's that, or they're not doing it completely, so they pass it to the next person. The next person has to do extra work to really complete what they are supposed to have done. I mean, studies have shown that easily a third of activity in a practice is this developed traffic phenomenon, which means that if there were the clock is still ticking, of course. When people are handling Dev T and fixing it, the clock is still ticking. Time is money. So if you actually drove out all the Dev T in your practice, you could be producing a third again as much as you are now in many cases without more personnel, just more efficient personnel. And what makes them efficient, again, just as Julie was saying, is that they are focused on a product. Now that becomes interesting too, because what does a dental assistant produce? Well, they produce a nice experience for the patient. True. They're helping the doctor. That's very true. Um, so their product, you could say their product is a helped doctor, or to put it in our lingo, a fully facilitated doctor. Is what they're doing fully facilitating the doctor, or is it something else? If it's not if it's not helping the doctor in such a wise that the doctor doesn't have to do things that an assistant can do, then the doctor is fully facilitated. Anything that falls short of that, the doctor finds himself doing things that, darn, I wish my assistants were doing this for me. If my assistants were really fully trained or really on the ball or really on top of things, I wouldn't be having to run and get that instrument that wasn't put on the tray. I wouldn't having to be checked to see if the lab case is in for the crown seat that we have scheduled tomorrow. Um, uh, all those things are a doctor is not fully facilitated. So it's a big, I mean, that's a big product. A
Right.
lot of pieces of that, and they all need to be laid out. And if they're all laid out and they're all being accomplished, then a lot of stress gets removed, a lot more efficiency occurs, and it's a lot more fun to just go in and do what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And to that point, a third, right? A third of what gets done is developed traffic. So unnecessary work that is doubled, that doesn't need to be done. That's 33% of your production. That's 33% of your time. And that's why we say most practices don't struggle because they lack patience. Most practices struggle because they lack efficiency and they lack a well trained staff. And all of that leads to an increased profitability, an increased bottom line, however you want to word it, less stress for the owner. The owner's not taking on things that they should not be doing. They're not a one man or one woman show. And so, it's sometimes and it's hard for owners to see. I have noticed when they're in it, like, no, this is just the way it is, and I don't know, and getting them to take a step back and look in objectively and not so much subjectively when one is in it gets them to really realize and look and see. And it takes a consultant, it takes another well-trained individual who's been doing this and has the insights to get them to look at those areas that they need to be looking at in order to come to those conclusions and fix it. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, every doctor that comes our way want their staff to be productive, obviously. Productive does not mean busy. Productive means they're producing a product. And what product they're supposed to be doing, coming back to what Julie said, it has to be very clearly defined. It needs to be named. And that single point right there, naming every person's product. And some people have multiple products, given that's the case. But every product a person is supposed to be producing should be very clearly named, because that's the first error. If you haven't clearly named it for the person, I have clients who come in and what's the receptionist produce? Well, they're the face of the practice. Okay, so what is the face of the practice producing? Well, they greet patients and they answer the phone. Okay, they do that. They do that. But what's the result that they're trying to accomplish by doing that? If you try to integrate all the things that they do into an outcome, arguably there are multiple outcomes, but a primary outcome for a receptionist would be a full schedule that's been properly scheduled and
Right.
is productively scheduled.
Right. Right.
It's not just their bodies on the schedule, that they're scheduled for production, so there's optimum production, and any other factors that you want to have applied to the way your schedule is put together. It's done correctly. That's a product, and as Julie's saying, there's got to be exchange with somebody. It's exchange with you.
Right.
I have a well-scheduled book. Great. You're going to be a happy doctor.
Exactly. Exactly. Now let's get into as we know, there are systems within any practice and more or less within any business, whether a practice owner is aware that they are there or not. But we know that there are six main systems that any practice or business, again, runs on, right? And these systems, when properly and fully implemented, produce these things that we are talking about, meaning that the structure of the systems and the implementation of it will get you to create products, job description manuals, efficiently run your staff, produce profitability, produce exchangeable products. But what I see, and you can let me know on your end too, Dave, when we start with owners of whatever type of practice that they have or business that they have, they probably have a semblance and a mild idea that these exist. Yeah, I need money, and I need to market, and I know I need staff, and I need to hire, and they need to, do their job. Um, and various other things, but being able to have them very well defined, delineated, assimilable, right? I can read it, I can take it in, I can understand it, and then go ahead and implement it, produces very specific things, which then, it's like you have, as an owner, you have this idea and you need that idea to make it work throughout the organization. And if it works, you get like this light bulb coming on, like ding, okay, good. We got exactly what we were trying to get with this patient or client. And when it doesn't, there's specific reasons, and only probably a couple, as to why, what resistance, what counter force, counter intention got in the way to stop that. So I know I kind of threw a lot in there, but let's first get into the systems, the operational systems behind efficient and accountable teams.
Yeah, we've laid out in Silkin Management, we've laid out six, as Julia mentioned, six major systems. There are also six minor systems, so 12 in total, but the six major systems. And as Julia said, they all exist in your practice. Just in the same way that in a body, in a human body or an animal body, there are all these systems. There's a skeletal system, there's a muscular system, there's a digestive system, et cetera, et cetera. They all interact, they all integrate, they all work together, coordinate to produce a functional body. And in a very exactly analogous way, the systems in your practice have to be there and have to be functioning. So, for example, the two systems that we normally concentrate on initially with our clients are the owner system. That's a whole system. There's a whole operationality, a functionality connected with being the owner. That's a hat. It's a leadership hat. It's an ultimate responsibility for the viability of the practice hat. And there are things that need to be done systematically for that hat to be doing and functioning the way it's supposed to so that it gets its product of a viable organization, rather foundational product for the whole existence of the whole practice. And then the executive system. Our doctors often come in also being the senior executive, even the chief operating executive of the practice, in addition to being the doctor. That is not what we would consider an ideal scene. And I think any doctors that are in that situation probably don't consider it ideal either, because you're having to monitor this and that. Gosh darn, it would be really nice if I had somebody else there to monitor these things. That's the executive system we're talking about. Somebody under you as the owner who is responsible for monitoring, supervising, ensuring that everybody there is very clear on their products and their hats, all the functions that they do to get their products. That's the person who's on the job making sure that's happening. It shouldn't be on the doctor's head. And that makes you much more efficient. By the way, if that buys you more free time, well, but I've got all this free time. I need to be in there working and making sure. Well, taking care of you as a doctor is a really critical, shall we say, sub-product. Burnt out doctor does not lend itself to great productivity and expansion. So taking care of the doctor owner by delegating all these things to an executive function, an executive system, has big payoffs that are not immediately available when you just think about them. A doctor who's a happy dude or dudette is an important piece of the puzzle too. So those are just a couple that we kind of lean on when our clients first come to us. The finance system, another big one, which is very closely tied into the owner system, because you got to be really confronting the money, knowing how to confront the money, not just going on hoping. And okay, we can produce our way out of this. Well, in many ways that's true, but there's a little bit more to it than just producing. Because if you're producing your way out of it and everybody's just getting busier, but they're not focusedly productive and they're generating another third of their activity being dev T, well, there's at least a third of your profits that's not happening, or income overall.
Right. Yeah, the specific system when we're talking about accountable teams and how to train your staff effectively without constant oversight, or as people like to call it, micromanaging, would be the personnel system, right? Because within the personnel system, we have staff who have full job description manuals, who have a statistic in which you are monitoring their production by, and then you have, how do you manage, right? What do you have to refer a staff to every single time in order to get them to produce or correct something that they did incorrect? Or a staff who's constantly late, oh my gosh, which we run into with practices when they first start with us. It's like, how do I fix this? I've talked to this person over and over and over and over again, and there is a specific way within the personnel system that handles that. It's very simple, it's very effective, it's very black and white, but, and it's an interesting, I think, concept that staff can get into, and in my opinion it's a bit of a resistance to being made to produce at a higher level or correctly, is stop micromanaging me. It's because it would we know if you have a specific type of staff, right? There's basically three type of personnel that you're only ever going to run into. If you have one, and one of them is willing, if you have willing staff, they're very easy to correct when you have policy and organization in place, right? Because there's only two things that can get in the way for you, and I said this earlier, as an owner or even as an office manager. You have your idea, you have what you want to get done, and at the end of the line, we can call it, or the end of the organizational flow, if everything was correct and got done as it should, you have this light bulb that goes on. There's only two things that's ever going to stop that light bulb from going on, or from you producing what you need or want. And it's organization, or lack of organization, or personnel. And so you have to have the right people. And when you have the right people, you have to ensure that you have systems in place to get them to produce and to be able to correct and manage staff without constant resistance, constant, ways out of not correcting and things of that nature.
Yeah, very much so. And if you have willing staff and you name very clearly what product you want them to produce, and then you support them with training and correction on an ongoing basis, they will get more and more refined, more and more efficient, and you're on the road. The other factor, of course, and Julie was kind of almost implying this in a few of her comments earlier, is you can have staff who are not really willing to varying degrees, who have pushback or counter intention. I intend that my hand goes over this way. Well, hey, there's another hand pushing back. Or an analogy I often use is if you're in a rowing team and you got six people in the scull or however many, and they're all rowing across the lake, but there's one person who's just leaning on his oar in the water and dragging the whole thing around. If everybody else is rowing, that boat's going to start going in circles. That's counter intention. That's pushback. That's not somebody who's not playing the game. Well, you got to handle that person and either get them playing the game or you got to get rid of them. And that's another point that doctors and managers can be a little bit shy on, is they don't. If you hit that point where you need to get rid of somebody because you've worked with them, you've given them a lot of chances. In my experience, our clients tend to give people way more chances than they deserve because you're decent people, you're going to be burdened. You're going to be burdened with that. And if you don't do anything about it for too long, you will find yourself, just saying, guys, you'll find yourself actually losing some of your good staff because they get tired of having to deal with the bad performance of staff that nothing effective is done to fix or replace. I mean, it's that it can become that serious a situation. And many of you may have experienced that. Many of you may have examples of people. I'm losing some good people. I'm holding on to this person. I wish that would be the person who would quit. Well, do everybody a favor and just fire them. And then the other people will be happy to stay. So just that factor is in the part of the whole systematic analysis of what's going on also.
Right. And it also directly ties into profitability, right? So profitability will break down in otherwise successful practices. We know that when we're talking to successful practices, we're talking to owners who are, at 30, 40, sometimes 50% profitability month over month over month, is they have these systems fully in place and they have a line with their staff who are constantly being trained correctly, being managed properly and with ease. It does not, one of one of the interesting comments that I find when working with new clients, right, is the resistiveness to human emotion and reaction, right? Well, I tell a staff who needs to do this, and I get pushback of like, well, all this, and Susie Joe didn't do this. And it's that unwillingness to experience somebody else's emotions connected to it. And those emotions are in some ways set up to stop myself from being pushed to produce, right? And when you're implementing these systems and you're kind of putting anything new in place and you're asking staff to kind of change and produce, and you are going to get resistance, right? You are going to get some pushback, and it's the ability to continue to push through the pushback and fully get these in place. And the profitability just strikingly increases. It just increases because you don't have what Dave alluded to earlier is developed traffic. So people are just working and producing. You're efficient. You know what your products are. You know how to manage your staff. And you have a schedule that, whatever your goals are is fully booked and booked to produce the production that you need to actually produce in a day and in a week, not just produced off a whim or things of I'm just getting bodies in the chair. There is a specific alignment that needs to occur, right? And the profitability will very much start to speak for itself when those things go into place. And so I'm not sure what your experience with that is, Dave, or what you want to add to that.
Well, yes. If all the systems are firmly in place, the profitability is going to occur. It's very interesting also that the more you get your staff, yourself and your staff, executive staff in particular, but all of your staff trained up on the management principles, in addition to their hats, basic management principles, um, and the closer you come toward attaining a real implementation of the systems, the more vividly departures from the systems show up in stark relief to the way it should be. And you can jump on them and handle them more effectively, more quickly, and more effectively, even right there. If you don't have the systems well defined and in place and things aren't going well, it becomes a much muddier situation to try to fix. You get all the systems in place, and systems break. Machines break. That's the way this universe is put together. And but if you've got the systems well defined, you can quickly isolate. And if you know how to fix it, you've got the methodology on how to fix things. Then there you go. We've defined it, we've fixed it, we move on, whatever that means. More training, correction, discipline, replacement, reorganization. Because the other thing that can happen, of course, is as you get bigger, as you expand, you are going to need, provided you've really driven out the dev T, you're going to need to bring on more help. Well, how do we do that? Is there any assignment of hats or responsibilities that needs to be reassigned? Re, uh, uh, maybe one person is wearing maybe too many hats, another person's not wearing quite as many hats. Well, there's a solution for that actually in the system. Um, there's a whole uh, tool called an organizing board that helps you determine who's wearing too many hats, who's wearing not enough hats, which can create backlogs, uh, bottlenecks of one kind that reduce the efficiency. That's another. It's another. It's all systems. It's
Right,
all systems.
right. So with that, what is the first adjustment that creates sustainable margins and stability for a practice or an owner in terms of systems?
Well, to me, the first adjustment is coming back to what we've already talked about, naming the product of the practice and naming the product of every individual position. Right behind that, you observe whether your staff want that product or not. Because if they don't want it, then you have to have a discussion. You either need to explain it, give them more understanding of it so that they do want it, so that they are willing, or maybe you need to find somebody else that is willing to get that product for you.
Right.
But that would be like the first adjustment uh, change that you would put in place to move your practice in that direction.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Excellent. Well, good. So we're going to wrap it up here and open it up for any question and answer or period. Before I do that, I do want to let everyone know that, a lot of the times it's what is necessary or what could be helpful, I should say, what absolutely could be helpful is to have a trained eye meet with you and ask very specific questions and start to do a deep dive into your practice and start to identify areas where you could be struggling or you may have questions or you're trying to figure something out and for a long time and haven't been able to. And we offer a free analysis. It is 100% free. There is no bait and switch here. To meet with our senior analyst, his name is Alan Jackson, AJ, and he takes 4 to 5 sessions. They're about 45 minutes to an hour each and just goes through your practice with you. All of our, anyone who's ever had a free practice analysis just raves about it. And you just get an opportunity to talk to someone who's been doing this for 30 plus years and has worked with every kind of practice situation out there and just start getting solutions. We just want to see everybody win and everybody do well. So I am putting it out there. I did put a link here in the chat. I'll put it here again. You can just go ahead and fill this out. It'll come directly to me and then we will get you scheduled for that. But go ahead, if you have any questions for Dave or myself, you can go ahead and put it in the chat there and we would be happy to answer them. We'll just give the people here a few minutes. Sometimes it takes them a while, but anything else you want to add, Dave, while we're waiting for any questions to come through?
Well, it's putting the systems in place and managing a practice is a technical activity. Management is a technical activity. And I don't mean anything more highfalutin than the fact that it's methods of application of an art or a science as opposed to mere knowledge of an art or science. And you become professional as a manager, as an executive, by getting training, just as you do to become a professional doctor. You get trained, you get drilled, you study your tail off, or as a paraprofessional, or a receptionist. You get trained, and then you're a pro, and then you get your product. So training is critical, and that's what we really are. We're educators. We educate our clients in that piece of education on running a practice that they had, if they were lucky, a lick and a promise exposure in professional school. And that's actually kind of a lack in professional school, but there you go. And therefore we exist. So
Exactly.
that's what I would say.
Exactly. They're not, you're not trained in business and, sometimes you have to look at your situation too and, you're like maybe in the back of your mind wondering if this is how it should be and this, it should be better. It shouldn't be this hard. Things should be more profitable. And you have to look at how that's affecting one. And we have find that a lot of the times it affects an owner tremendously, and the amount of relief that they begin to feel as they move out of that situation. right? And, but the effect that it creates. And then you have to look at, well, gosh, what happens if this gets worse? Because we know within the universal laws, we could say, that we live in, things never remain the same. The situation is always either getting better or worse. And if you're not doing something to make that situation better, effective, we know, it's going to get worse, and that's just not fun to deal with.
And the systems, by the way, is something that in the analysis, Alan Jackson uses the systems to help you analyze your practice. And that's one of the values of the systems. I've got a practice, it's not doing well, I'm not making enough money. Well, there's a problem there. You have to analyze a problem. You have to confront it, obviously. The way to confront it is in pieces. And having the systems help you start looking at the pieces. What's the strong points? What are the weak points? And then you can start coming up with actually productive solutions. So systems are the key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, excellent. Doesn't look like we have any questions today. I want to thank everyone for getting on. If you have questions, you can email at Julia, Julia, at silkinmanagementgroup.com. Again, Julia, Julia, at silkinmanagementgroup.com, and I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you, Dave, for your time as always, and happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays all. Thank you, Julia.